Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's the countdown. Hey, hi-yo there. This is going to be very different. This is very uncomfortable for me right now because this is not the normal setup. This is like completely and utterly different. But hey, hi-yo there. Welcome. Irk, hello. Chief. Chef Callisti in the house. Hi. How you guys doing tonight? Welcome, welcome to the Homestead. Like this is there's just a completely different feel to this whole thing. I don't have a plan. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have a plan. It's just not like completely and utterly fleshed out yet. You know what I'm saying? Irk, hello. Chief, glad to hear it. So like I said, this is going to be very different. This is a different kind of broadcast for me. You never know, because you know you're never awkward on the other channel. I mean, never, ever awkward on the other channel. I wanted to make sure that the music was playing, and I realized about 4 minutes in. Okay, first off, this is a little loud, isn't it? I realized about 4 minutes in that, yeah, that's really loud, isn't it? That there wasn't any music in the starting soon screen because I built it, you know, 6 minutes ago. But yeah, that was, so it's funny because I was like, okay, 8-ish is the plan, right? I'm going to be live 8-ish. Putting the kids down. I'm like, okay, I got about 15 minutes to get ready to do this. And then I was like, crap, I don't have a starting soon screen. I forgot to plug the microphone in because I ran other cabling to the streaming rig to do the other cabling. So I forgot to plug that in. I didn't have a microphone, and I was like, oh, well, this is what's new? This is a splendid start. So tonight, I wanted to, as part of this, and I know this was super last minute. I know this was like, everyone was like, what is he doing? This is not gaming related. This is not Dad Got Game. This is not anything like that. So something that I've been doing for a long time now, multiple years. I remember my first time streaming too. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might as well be. I have cameras, like I have both cameras set up. I've got both cameras set up. So I'll be switching to I've got a couple different views, but obviously everything's very basic right now because I have no idea where this is going to go, if anywhere. I have no idea what all this is going to entail. I plan on covering content across a broad range of topics. I want to cover, obviously we're at the reloading bench, right? And so I had to do what I do, and I had to set up like lighting and, you know, so at least some basic like aesthetic stuff, because there's no way that I'm going to make content that isn't at least aesthetically pleasing in some way, shape, or form, right? So I was like, you know what? Yo, what's up, Herc? How you doing, bud? Good to see you, my guy. Nice. What bounties are you running, Herc? But yeah, I'm this channel is going to be very much dedicated to non-gaming content. So for instance, tonight we're going to be reloading some 9mm hollow points while I chat with you guys about what content I want to cover as part of this channel. I really don't think that there's anything that's going to be off limits on this channel. If we want to talk about politics, I mean, if you'd like, I can go grab, I have an American flag, the one that I wear. I don't care if it's gay. Like, we can talk about gaming on this channel. I'm not opposed to that, but I feel very limited on Twitch with what I can talk about, right? If we talk about politics, it's super divisive. I wanted the place where we could talk about politics, we could talk about faith, we could talk about preparedness, we could talk about all sorts of things on this channel that we wouldn't talk about on Twitch, where we wouldn't talk about in the gaming space. I don't want to be limited here by what we can talk about. we're still going to be making family friendly content here. I expect y'all, I mean, we've built a community around family friendly content. Are things going to maybe get heated? Are people going to disagree on certain topics? Absolutely. Like, that's going to happen. But as long as we can keep it civil, and as long as there isn't name calling and a bunch of crap like that, because I'll time anyone out if you're going to be dicks. You know what I mean? And I say you as in not you guys, because you guys know what my expectations are for what the community entails, right? But new people who come in who might be, you know, new to this this type of live stream, which again, I don't see a lot of people doing live streams like this on these topics. Where's my frying pan? I'll be honest with you guys. I have no idea what I'm doing on YouTube. It has been so long since I've streamed to YouTube. I have no idea what I'm doing on YouTube. So it's going to take time for me to figure all of that stuff out too, right? So there's a learning curve on that, on top of the fact that, again, this is very different content for me. This is obviously not what my normal content is. So I'm still figuring out how to mod people, or who knows? Do we need mods? We might need mods, maybe. I don't know how many people are going to find this type of content. I don't know how long this content's going to last. I have plans for it, of course. I want to cover everything from reloading and educating people on reloading ammo. I want to educate people on shooting stuff. Obviously, that's not going to happen in my basement. So I'm going to have to figure out how to bring you live content, you know, from the range. I want to teach people about gardening. I want to teach people about building things. There's a whole swath of things that go into homesteading, right? And I use that term very loosely because homesteading seems to be the most appropriate term for what I'm kind of progressing with. When I first got into, and that's exactly it. Irk, is I don't, would you prefer I call you knickknacks or Irk? Or does it matter? Yeah, it's going to be chatting about whatever relevant topics we want to talk about. I don't want anything to be off limits here. If we want to talk about conspiracy theories, go for it. Like, I love myself a good conspiracy theory. How much I put into a conspiracy theory is another topic, but I mean, if we want to ham it up and talk Walking Dead, let's talk Walking Dead. Or if we want to talk Great Reset, let's talk Great Reset, right? Like, I don't want to limit anything. I don't want there to be anything where people didn't feel like there are topics that are off limits. And again, as long as we can be kosher with each other, I don't care what we cover. So, but I'm gonna actually, I want to calibrate my item here, or my powder trickler. So hold tight while I do that. We're gonna go ahead and flip over there. So we got that one, calibrate that, and we should zero out here once it's done. Okay, there's 100. There's 50. So I've got a 50 gram and 100 gram weight. That's zero, that's stable, and that should be calibrated. So, so yeah, I want this to be kind of like a place where we can talk about the things that we wouldn't be able to talk about on Twitch, right? I want this to be a place where we can talk about the things that are not gaming related, where a lot of people use the Twitch channel and they use the Twitch channel and they use the gaming space as an escape. But I feel like there's a lot of topics that are forbidden. I feel like there's a lot of topics that are forbidden in the gaming space that I frankly would love to talk to people about and find people who are like-minded about and have those conversations with, because I don't feel like we get the opportunity to have those conversations in the gaming space. And it could be, what's up, ZZ? How you doing, bud? Welcome. I feel like it's basically forbidden, and it shouldn't be, right? We're all people. We're all affected by the same things. We obviously have been, the world has been through quite a 2020, and it was extra stressful for those of us who are Americans, right? It's me, Dad. Wait, it's me who? ZZ? Okay. I just see ZZ, but I'm not sure who ZZ is. Ow! Yo, what's up, bud? My first Patreon subscriber is in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I gotta figure out if there's a way for me to link that to YouTube. I don't even think I have my Patreon link in the description. So there's a lot of things that I have to do that I was trying to prep, but I wanted to get started with this because I want this to be a space where we can talk. And what I'm particularly interested in is getting viewpoints from outside the States. We have a pretty diverse crew on Twitch of folks like Zane that don't live in the States, right? That have a completely different perspective on their way of life, in regards to everyday life, in regards to potentially preparedness, in regards to things like, self-sufficiency. And Yakuza actually described something he said something in the Discord, and that's what rings true to me, is about being self-sufficient as a human being. A lot of us have gotten into a mindset where a lot of people get, oh, for sure, if I wasn't going to kick this, like, I could spend another 4 weeks dedicated to just this to get it where I want it to be. This is going to be a work in progress, and I know this is going to be a work in progress. That's why I was like, you know what, screw it, we're just going to go in on it. Like, I'm going to start doing it, and that's what we're going to do, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I wanted to get started, because if I didn't get started, we'd never get started, right? But back to my point about self-sufficiency, right? A lot of us are extremely reliant on systems we have no control over, right? And that's a scary prospect. That is a scary prospect. When you think about feeding your family, and this is what kind of kicked me into gear almost 8 years ago. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's going to be 100%. There's going to be growing pains. Let's go ahead and zero that. We're going to put in 4.5 grains. So the load that I'm doing right now, for those of you who are interested in what's actually going on the table, I am loading using some Ogden HP 38, 9mm Luger. 4.5 grains is what I am putting into the cases, which are already primed. We're going to go through, once I get these 50 rounds done, I'm going to go through, and I've got a whole nother set. I've got a whole nother set of cases here. And I'm actually, right now I'm going to load up 50 hollow points. And then I've got a set of Everglades 115 grain, just full metal jacket that I'm going to be loading up as well. So I've got 115 grain TAC XP hollow points. These are my personal defense rounds that I use. And then I've got the Everglades, just the full metal jackets for plinking when I'm going to go out and actually, train with my weapon. But yeah, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be things that I need to do as part of this, but I also wanted to actually get started with it. Now I've got 2 scales that I'm running right now. I've got one built into the powder trickler, and then I've got one separate from this just to check my loads to make sure that they're not overloading at this point. So we're going to go ahead and run that. Usually what ends up happening, what ends up happening here is that we, the first few trickles overload, and then once you start getting into a rhythm, you'll kind of get to a point where you're comfortable with your loads and how they're actually coming out. So we're gonna go ahead and trickle that down. But yeah, something that got me started on my like preparedness journey, and that's where I started, right? Was like 6 or 7 years ago. I had this weird, yep, I am making bullets right now, Zane. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm making a couple of different things. One is a personal defense round, a hollow point personal defense round. I'll show you this up close. That's why I set up the second camera. So this is a hollow point 9mm Luger hollow point round. X-Tac. I'm using a Barnes X-Tac round for that, and then I will be loading just plinking rounds. And I'm going to be loading plinking rounds for up north. Well, and that's an interesting thing too, Zane, is that something that we don't get to talk about on Twitch is gun control laws. Something that is obviously a hotly debated topic here in the States is gun control, and just the culture around guns. It's very different here in the States from what I think the rest of the world recognizes, or at least what would be considered the rest of the developed world, right? And that's what I actually find interesting. Something that separates the United States from everybody else is that we weren't okay with a tyrannical government telling us what to do, and therefore decided to do something about it, and that included defending ourselves with the weapons of the day, right? I forgot to tear this, so hold please. We're gonna go ahead and tear that down to 0, and we'll recheck here. And obviously there are a lot of folks who are avid about the fact that the tragedy of things like mass shootings need to be stopped. How do we stop them, right? And there are a lot of different frames of thought. Okay, this came up just short, so we're gonna go ahead and dump that back in and rerun. The nice thing about this Pardo Trickler is that I can actually, it auto loads as I'm doing. I've used at the gun range my uncle used to take me. That's awesome. I think everyone should shoot a gun at least once. It's not for everyone, right? That's not something that, like, I'll give you a for instance. Mom Got Game won't carry a gun. She's fine with shooting guns and everything like that, but there is a level of responsibility that comes with personal defense. There's a level of responsibility that comes with owning and carrying a weapon, and it's something that I take very seriously. As a gun owner, I feel like there are way too many instances of people not handling their weapons appropriately and not understanding the responsibility that goes along with owning a firearm. That includes safety at home. That includes understanding how a weapon is stored. That includes adhering to the 4 major safety rules of firearms, right? You treat every gun like it's loaded. You never point it at something you don't want to destroy, right? You always have to adhere to the firearm safety rules, right? If you are storing a weapon, you should store it away from kids. Like, if your kids can climb up on a shelf, unless it's a shelf that can't be climbed up to, right? You need to take care of storing your weapons. And there's a struggle, as someone who is a protector, someone who believes it is my job It is my responsibility as a citizen of this country to protect my fellow citizens, including my family. I have a personal responsibility to responsibly own my firearm and to handle that in a way that makes sense, right? And so if we aren't taking that responsibility seriously, I don't believe that people who can't handle that appropriately should carry weapons, right? I've used a 9mm Browning at the range. That's all my uncle would allow me to use. That's fair. That's fair. I currently only own one pistol. Well, I own two pistols. One of them is an AR-15 pistol. The other one is a 9mm Glock. So I own a pistol, an AR pistol, and an AR. But I think everyone should shoot at least once, right? There was a case over here, a home invasion. The owner retaliated against the robbers and got sued by the robbers. The sad reality of that is that has happened stateside too, right? And this is how backwards, to me, the world has gotten. Okay, so I am currently using a caliper to measure overall length, and I want that to be at 1.14. So if it's 141, 142, or 138, that's an acceptable tolerance. That's an acceptable tolerance for the overall length for the round. That's not okay. Like, if you're going to break the law and break into someone's home to steal their property, that is a threat. And that is a risk that you're taking as the intruder. Another case, a farmer shot some thieves, he got jailed. How is that okay? They are violating my personal property and my person. That is a threat against me. I don't know what your intent is. I don't know that you're just there to steal stuff. How do I know that you're not there to do bad things to myself and my family? In Wisconsin, there is castle doctrine. So for those of you who are not familiar with castle doctrine means that we are allowed, if a perceived threat is deadly, we are allowed to defend our home against the intruders. So if they enter your premises, if they cross your threshold, this is written into the state constitution as of right now. If they enter your home, you are allowed to use, especially in the middle of the night, you are allowed to use deadly force because there is a perceived threat on your life. Right? Now, if they enter your home, what's up, Pat? Hi. It's okay. There's no alpha here. So it's fine. So if they enter your home, okay, that one came up a little short for some reason. If they enter your home, and leave your home, so let's say they're running out the door, you are not allowed to then shoot the intruder or use deadly force on the intruder, right? Because they have shown a sign of retreat and they have chosen to exit the premises. I don't know why I'm getting an under. Oh, this isn't stabilized yet. Okay. In the UK, we are only allowed to use reasonable force to protect your property or family. I had a cop tell me after my apartment had been robbed, he wished I had been home to shoot the guy because it would have been less paperwork. That's crazy. See that? And that's Texas, right? Jimbro says, how can a criminal in act have more rights than a citizen protecting themselves and their property? I know, that's a great question, right? That should never be the case. That should never be the case. The criminal has violated your rights as a person. You have entered my space as a person, right? You have threatened my life. And even if you're just there to steal property, if you break in the middle of the night, I don't know that. I'm in a dead sleep, out cold, and I hear my front door kick in. You better believe I'm shooting first and asking questions later. Like, if they hear me rack the weapon and run out the door, mission accomplished. And I've had this conversation with a lot of folks who can't fathom having to take another life. And I can't fathom what that would feel like. I have prayed on multiple occasions that I never, ever, ever, ever have to use my weapon in self-defense, because that's a terrifying prospect to me. You're going to find a lot of folks who own, you're going to find a lot of folks who own a weapon talk a big game. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of those people. I have no desire ever to have to use that weapon in self-defense, because that's a terrifying prospect to me. But I will never allow myself, someone I know, or even someone I don't know to be violated if I have the chance to do something about it. That is what God has instilled in me. I'm a protector. As someone who was bullied in high school, I don't put up with that crap. I do not put up with that crap. I will not watch someone else be bullied. I will not allow my family or myself to be bullied. Plain and simple. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Callistia. I hope to never, and prepared to have to if it comes down to it. Right? And that's I think that's a choice that every gun owner should make prior to owning a gun. If you're going to go buy a weapon, you need to prepare to train with it, and to train with it to the point where you are proficient enough to be able to use it if the time were to ever come, and to use it in a responsible way, right? This is part of the reason why I use hollow points as a personal defense round. Does anyone know in the chat why you would use hollow points for a personal defense round as opposed to a full metal jacket? I was house sitting my dad's ranch. He had some stray pit bulls show up and act like they own the place. Holy crap. You don't buy a guitar and never play it until you need it. Makes a small hole. Actually, it makes a bigger hole, Zane. Had to go get the shotgun. That's crazy. But that's scary, right? Like, you've got a 1.5-year-old in the house. You're house sitting in a strange house not strange house, right? On a house you're not necessarily as familiar with as maybe you would want to be. And then you've got some crazy pit bulls coming up and potentially harming yourself or your 1.5-year-old. That's not okay. Actually, Zane, so the hollow point round will keep you from doing collateral damage, or it will help with collateral damage. So when you use a hollow point round, on impact it spreads out, right? So when a hollow point hits, it spalls or spreads. Spall is probably not the right word, but it spreads more than a full metal jacket does, right? A full metal jacket has the potential to go through your target and hit something behind it. And that's what you have to be careful of. It expands on impact and therefore minimizes the collateral damage outside of the target that you would be shooting at, right? So if you're using, and this is actually, I have concealed carry insurance, so that I have access, I have lawyers on retainer if I were ever involved in a personal defense shooting. And one of the things that they say is to make sure that you're using hollow point rounds as a personal defense round. Because if you're not, you could end up in a situation where you're justified in a personal defense shooting, however, will still either do time or end up with massive fines or end up with a record because you did collateral damage and you should have known better. So I always tell people, if you're going to carry, you need to make sure you're carrying using hollow point rounds, because it minimizes your potential exposure if you do end up in a self-defense shooting, and it minimizes your potential liability if there's collateral damage in. You need to prove that you did everything you could to minimize the collateral damage that's done in a defense shooting. What's this weird place? Hi, Big Mama. Hello. You know, this brings me back. Except we were playing Destiny. Can I ask you your... I use CCW Safe. A lot of people use USA Carry. I use CCW Safe. I did a little bit of research into CCW Safe, and they actually have a $1 million bailout fund that's available for people involved in a self-defense shooting. So they can post bail for you in addition to having lawyers on retainer. In addition to having lawyers on retainer, they can actually post bail for you as well. So, do you have one license for all your guns or separate for different guns? You do not have to license your weapons in the state of Wisconsin. You do still have to pass a background check. There is a lot of, and this is where the political system gets very interesting. A lot of folks, a lot of Democrats in our country believe that there is not a universal background check system. They're wrong. There is 100% a universal background check system. You cannot buy a new weapon from a dealer without going through a background check. It's physically impossible to do. You cannot go to a gun show and buy a weapon from a dealer without passing a background check. So everyone has to go through a background check before they purchase a weapon from a dealer. Then that gun, that serial number is registered. That serial number is registered with the FFL, the Firearms Liaison. And once you've passed the background check, you can then take said weapon home. So in Wisconsin, we are not required to have, like in Illinois, you have to have what's called a FOIT card. It's a firearms operator license, essentially. You have to have a FOIT card in Illinois. In Wisconsin, you do not have to have a FOIT card. So I am not required to have a license. I do have to have a license to concealed carry, but it's separate from the registration of a weapon. Is it FOID? I always thought it was, for some reason I thought it was FOID. The Firearms Operation ID card? That makes sense. I knew you have to have a special card, and you have to have 16 hours of training, which, by the way, I'm not necessarily opposed. I'm not necessarily opposed to training requirements. However, what I am opposed to is making the owner foot the bill. If you're going to require, I believe that every firearm owner should train with their weapon, 100%, right? But here's the problem. If you make it prohibitively expensive for someone to own a firearm, you're essentially restricting their right to bear arms, right? And this is why in places like California and New York, right, they've essentially neutered the Second Amendment already, because they chose to make it exceptionally hard to own a firearm. They put so many laws and restrictions in place that most people can't afford to own one. So it's challenging, to say the least. What's open carry? I've seen videos of people doing it to make a point to the police. Why do they do that to those people? So the difference between open carry and concealed carry. Open carry is when the firearm would be located visible, right? Let's say this is a firearm. This is not a firearm. This is a multi-tool. Okay? But let's just pretend for the sake of demonstration that this were a firearm, right? The way that I'm carrying this would be considered open carry, right? This would be considered open carry. You can see it. It's in the open. People can see it, right? This would be concealed carry, right? This is now concealed. Not very well, mind you, but this is concealed, right? So this is the difference between concealed carry and open carry. It's whether or not you are concealing the weapon from the sight of the public. So a lot of people are of the belief that open carry keeps people from doing anything in the first place, right? Let's say you walk into a bank and you're open carrying, right? I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've got my weapon on my hip. I'm in a bank. Let's say a bank robber comes in, right? And let's say that bank robber isn't the kind with the mask and, you know, a fully automatic weapon that is illegal to own in the United States, and they're gonna rob that bank, right? Bad guy comes in and let's say they're concealed carrying. Bad guy comes in, they're gonna rob the bank. They see you open carry. They're way more likely to walk right back out than they are to try and rob that bank, because they know that there's a threat on their life before they even start to rob that bank, right? Or that liquor store or that gas station or whatever the case might be. Just like someone who's going to rob your home, if they know you own weapons, I'll give you a for instance. You're a lot less likely to get robbed with a Trump sign in your front yard than you are with a Biden sign in your front yard. Why is that? Because there's way more Trump supporters that have guns than Biden supporters. That's just the reality of the system that we live in right now, right? Same thing with let's say an ADT sign, right? Let's say you have an ADT sign or a security sign. I have a home security system, right? Someone who's going to rob your house, if they see that sign, they're going to be a lot less likely to try and rob your house because they know they'll get caught. Yes. Trump is pro Second Amendment. Biden is anti Second Amendment. No, Biden is anti freedom, frankly. I'm allowed to say that here. He is anti-Second Amendment. He wants to basically limit every gun to 3 rounds, which effectively neuters anyone's ability to defend their home. I'll be honest, I frankly didn't care for either candidate. this go round. But I will tell you that I voted to protect my family. And frankly, if you really want to get into it, I believe that there are, yes. So the Second Amendment explicitly says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Right? The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So we as American citizens are supposed to be able to carry weapons, have weapons, and own weapons in order to defend our family and, frankly, defend against a tyrannical government from taking over, which is how we won our independence in the first place. So that was built in. That was built into our Constitution to ensure that we always had the ability as the people, we the people, we always had the ability to defend ourselves if the government ever got out of control. That is what the Second Amendment was written for and why it exists. So it's one of those things that I take very seriously. I also happen to love history. I do a lot of reading online about history and you know, how dynasties came to be, how they fell, things along those lines. And I will tell you right now that every country who has ever had a government take over and choose to be a dictatorship or you know, the Communist Party takeover or whatever, right? Anytime that they've installed a single party system, what's the first thing they did? Nazi Germany did it. China has done it. Russia has done it. Venezuela has done it. What's the first thing they did? I'll give you guys a wild guess. No one? Bueller? I wonder what the delay is here. Is there a long delay here? Starts with G. Starts with a T or an R, depending. Took away free speech. Yeah, I'm sure that's it, Chief. I'm sure that's what they did. Yep. You got it, Herc. They took away the rights of people, the civilian population, to own guns. And so when people are like, there's a lot of people out there who are like, the U.S. would never do that. Our government would never do that. We can take away the guns. They would never take away our free speech without the guns. Really? I don't remember who says it, but it's apt and perfect for this argument. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you think that the government has your best interest in mind, history has proven otherwise. Read about it. History has proven otherwise. Come on, trickle out. I need 4.5. I need 4.5. Give me a 4.5. Gonna get a 4.5. So for those of you who might be just joining us or wondering what the heck is going on right now, I'm currently measuring powder, double checking said powder in the second scale, pouring said powder into a case that is already primed, grabbing a bullet, pressing it, checking the length, overall length of it, and moving on to the next one. Literally what the fascists did in Italy. Yep. So that's my concern, and it was like 6 or 8 years ago. I kind of started catching wind. I think it was an election cycle. I feel like an election cycle always brings this out in me, right? Where I'm like, oh crap, world's ending. World's ending. If this person gets in office, the world's ending. Which isn't entirely true, but you know what? Bear with me for a second. I feel like this election is no different and was probably one of the most polarizing elections in my entire life. That made me feel like there's literally a threat to our democracy, and there's a threat to my well-being and my family's well-being and my community's well-being. And so that kind of kicked off my red lights to be like, okay, maybe we should like revisit some of the stuff that we, maybe should be potentially prepared for. I generally like, I like to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories for the fun of it. Whether or not I actually believe it is a completely different story. Herc, have a good day at work, man. I appreciate you stopping on in, dude. I really do. Thank you for stopping on over. You know what I just realized? I don't have any way to tell if anyone subbed or anything. So if you all subbed to the channel and you didn't sub before, or even if you did sub before, I appreciate the subs, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for spending the time. And thank you for the subs. I don't know how to actually check that. Go figure. Pro Strimma. But yeah, as far as conspiracy theories go, again, I have a tendency to lean on the side of it's probably not true, but it's always fun to like talk about, because it's one of those things where it's like it gets your mind thinking about things outside of the box, outside of the norm. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I think it's always healthy to consider different perspectives and consider different possibilities, right? When it gets unhealthy is when you start to get panicky about it, and then you go out and do silly things, illegal things or otherwise. That's when it kind of gets a little out of hand potentially, right? But I mean, as far as the rise and fall of nations and government abusing power, human nature would dictate that. Yo, what's up, Lady PK? Is this thing on? Testing. Hello. Hi. This thing is on. It is live, and we are currently live to the world, reloading ammunition and talking about conspiracy theories, apparently. As far as like government takeover and stuff like that. Okay, that only loaded 4.3. I don't like that. Let's go ahead and dump that back in. And we'll try that again. Is the potential for that to happen? Absolutely. When human beings get a certain amount of power, they like to keep that power. They like to hoard that power. They like to gain more power, right? I don't think it's above the. I don't think it's an impossibility that at some point in the future, whether near term or long term, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that the U.S. government may try to become a communist country. I don't think it's think it's out of the realm of the possibility that it could become a fascist country. Part of our job as citizens should be holding our representatives accountable so that they don't gain so much power that they're literally unstoppable. Do you get your reloading supplies from one location or multiple places? Multiple places. I have ordered a lot of this stuff online, but I also got a lot of like some of the components. Everglades Ammo is a great place to go for just plinking rounds. So I've got a bunch of 9mm full metal jacket. I've got a bunch of 223 full metal jacket. They sell brass. They sell. It's almost impossible to find primers right now. But I can find. I was able to find. Oh, crud. Why is that 4.4? Close enough. Good enough. I've ordered from Midway. I've ordered from Optics Planet. I've ordered from Everglades Ammo for components. As far as like tooling goes, some of my stuff I've gotten local. There was actually one of the dealers. Why did I put an empty case in there? You got to really kind of pay attention to this stuff. You know what I mean? I've gotten some of my stuff local. There was a guy who unfortunately passed away who owned a dealership. His kids don't want it anymore. And so they had a going out of business sale. I got a bunch of the tooling and some of the components there. So it varies. I get it from a lot of different areas. Yo, what's up, Yakuza? Humans don't know anything. We scaled the information to what we need to understand right now. The scale made by humans is not the scale that could apply to the universe. Ain't that the truth, though? Bro, I'll agree with you on that all day long, dude. But again, I go back to the fact that when human beings gain too much power, they crave more. And if they're given that power and they're given that ability to just railroad whoever they want, that's when governments get into trouble, and that's when citizens get into even more trouble. Right? So that's why it's so important for citizens to hold their public servants accountable. And if that means that we have to own weapons just to hold them accountable, then so be it. I firmly believe, this is just my belief, I have no backup for this other than history, right? So take that or leave it, right? But as far as history goes, when you disarm a population, they are vulnerable for a one-party system to come in and sweep everything clean and say, this is how it's going to be. Right? So, if that's true, then the 300 and some odd years ago, when we came over here, and in 1776, when we successfully fought off the British to gain our independence, right? If we give up that ability to hold our government accountable, even if it's a scare tactic by half the population owning weapons, there's nothing stopping them from deciding, we're going full on socialism. We're going full on communism. We're going to do whatever we want because we have the power now. And don't tell me it can't happen, because we've seen it throughout history. What's up, PK? How you doing, bud? And so that's part of why I'm doing this. That's part of why I'm doing my part. I want to educate people. I want to learn from people. There are a lot of people from our community who have vastly different experiences than I do. And I appreciate that because I can learn. And I think I've always said that the day you stop learning is the day you die. The day you stop learning is the day you die. You learn something every day, right? Whether you realize it or not is a different story, right? And whether you're intentional about trying to learn is another thing too. I always try and learn something new every day, even if it's small, even if it doesn't have any applicability to me right now. I always try and learn something new because I think it's important, right? I think it turned out really good. This, it took me a long, part of the reason why I waited so long to like do this, I was trying to come up with a logo that represented everything about Homestead Heroic that I wanted it to represent. Faith, sustainability, self-sustainability, homesteading and gardening, community. All of those things are important to me. And all of those things matter to me. And I needed something that represented all of those facets, right? So I came up with this logo. I don't know if I can get there, right there. I came up with this logo because it represents cross. It represents an axe. It represents community. And to me, that was important, right? I needed something to represent it. Marxism is going to get killed by me. I'm from Russia. I want a piece of my own, and I'm not going to give it up without a fight. Well, and that's, I think a lot of folks, I think there's a lot of folks in our community, in this community, right? Which is now kind of a combined yet separate community. I didn't really know how to handle Homestead Heroic because this is a completely different side of me as a person, and this is completely separate from gaming. This has nothing to do with gaming. In fact, this is probably the exact opposite of that, right? It's putting aside the technology in the world for something simpler. I grew up simple. My parents were not wealthy. I did not have everything I wanted as a kid, but I did have a roof over my head and I had food in my stomach. I learned what love was, and I learned what compassion was, and what empathy was, but I also learned how to work hard. I learned that if I was going to live in this world, I was going to need to contribute to something greater to myself, but I was going to have to go out and get it. And it drives me nuts. Like, I can understand the desire. I can see the sword in the hilt too, Pat. I never saw it like that, but as the designer, like, I had a certain thing in my head when I designed it, but I could see that. My big thing is that nowadays I see people who are like, we need free education and we need free college. And I'm like, they're talking about forgiving $50,000 in debt for anyone who went to college. I paid off my student loans 5 years ago. I busted my butt and I had to do without to pay off my student loans. I couldn't do everything I wanted to do. I couldn't go on the vacations I wanted to go on because I had to pay off my student loans, because I held myself personally responsible to pay off my student loans. And it ticks me off that they're considering we're just gonna wipe the slate clean. And you know what pisses me off even more is that there are members of Congress who will directly benefit from that legislation. If that doesn't go ding, 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 someone's abusing their power for their own self-interest, I don't know what does. That rings a bell in my head. So if people are suddenly able to just write their own legislation to benefit themselves, what's to stop them from writing legislation to benefit themselves further? I grew up in you grew up in Siberia. My values is in my family. Mess with that and it's going to get crazy. I love it. I didn't grow up in Siberia and I feel that exact same way. I didn't grow up in Siberia, but I do feel that way. And a lot of people have attacked folks like me because they're like, I don't care about the greater community. I don't care about the overall well-being of everyone else. And it's funny because I voted the way I voted because not just because of I'm pro Second Amendment, but because there was legislation that was passed in the last 4 years that actually helped communities I care about, particularly the Black community. School choice, opportunity zones, to speak of two. A focus on ending human trafficking, which is modern day slavery. There's a third one. Prison reform. You know who that predominantly helps? Low-income Black families. I live in the most segregated city in the country. I've seen that poverty. And if you think I don't care about that, you're full of I don't have a beep button. I don't have a beep button. I need a beep button. Crap. If you don't think I care about that, you're full of it. But for once, someone actually legislated to help those communities. But no one else knew about that. You want to know why no one knew about that? Because the mainstream media didn't cover it. They wouldn't talk about it. I had to dig for that. I had to actually go look at the legislation that got passed. They didn't want to know about it. And that to me is frustrating. Because for as much as they seem to care about the Black community, they don't seem to want to do anything about it. Obama made historical Black colleges and universities come back year after year after year to request funding, right? In some cases, only gave them the bare minimum funding that was guaranteed to them via the legislation that was passed years ago. The last 4 years, they were given more funding year over year than the previous administration did. And not only that, but they also passed legislation that guaranteed that funding for 10 years. Bet you didn't know that. How could you? No one covered it. School choice. The opportunity for low-income families, predominantly Black families. There's some logistics wrong with this, right? But the legislation was there to allow them to go to better schools because inner city schools are notoriously bad at educating poverty-stricken families because they don't have the taxes to pay for it. Right? So they pass school choice. Give people the option to go to a school that isn't directly in their neighborhood. and traditionally, typically a better school, right? These are the things, these are the issues that I voted on. But yet somehow I'm a racist. So, go figure. But those are the things that you should be caring about, right? You should be looking at what are your legislators doing? How are they having an impact? And what can we do better? And then hold them accountable for it. The problem I see is that the vast majority of people don't seem to want to know. They just want to be spoon-fed the information that aligns with their personal biases as best as possible. And then they'll just roll with that. So anyway, I don't know how we got on that topic, but I got my spiel out now, so we could probably move on to something else. The number of people who have not educated themselves on the policies that matter to them is flabbergasting. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about politics. I know a lot of people they just want to ignore it. And I get it. It sucks that we should have to pay attention to these things and we can't trust our elected officials to do what's right for the most people that they possibly can. And I get the idea that we want free education for everyone. We want free college for everyone, right? We want free healthcare for everyone. And I don't disagree with the fact that a lot of low-income families don't have access to the healthcare they need, right? I think we should do a better job of trying to figure out a way to get those people healthcare. But you want to know what free healthcare for all is going to do to the country? You think COVID's bad right now? Roll out free healthcare for all and see how that goes. The healthcare system in our country is already broken. We pay 3 times as much for an appendectomy as they do in other places. Now, some people would say, well, that's because we don't have healthcare for all. If we had healthcare for all, all those prices would come down, right? But so would the quality of everything. Do you know where the most medical innovations come from in the world? Where do the most medical innovations in the world come from? Oh, that's right. They come from the United States. You want to know why? Because we have privatized healthcare. If you think people are going to be incentivized to come up with better solutions for things without there being any sort of profit involved, you don't understand economics or the human condition. I'll tell you right now, the reason socialism has failed everywhere in the world and why quality of life is garbage in socialist countries is because if I'm not incentivized to work hard because I can earn more or give my family a better outcome, why would I work? I'll tell you right now, if we go socialism in the States, first off, I'm going to see if I can get my family out of the country. I don't know where I'll go, but hopefully somewhere. But if we go socialism in the States, I'm not going to work as hard as I do right now. I'm going to do the bare minimum to squeak by. Get my government benefits and do what I can to do the best for my family. Go to Canada if you want free healthcare. Let's see how long it takes you to get an organ, right? Long lines, wait lists. People dying waiting for stuff. Not that people don't die waiting for stuff in the States, but it's certainly not as hard as, it's not as bad as socialized healthcare. Now, here's the other thing. You know where we do have socialized healthcare in the US, and it's atrocious, it's disgusting, and it hurts more people? The VA. And I know some of y'all are vets in here, and you can vouch for this. My sister's a vet. My brother-in-laws are vets. They'll vouch. The VA is socialized healthcare. How many people die waiting for help? How many vets? 17 commit suicide every day. Waiting for the mental health help they need. So now you want to do that for everyone else? I'll pass. So it's funny, and I like that. I like that. I could get on board with the fact that Obamacare, apparently, I have not validated this myself, so take this with a grain of salt. But according to the debates, 20 million Americans had benefits that wouldn't have had them otherwise, right? So we gained 20 million people who got benefits through the ACA, right? So those are 20 million people who wouldn't have had benefits otherwise. Here's the rub. The rest of our benefits, if you had private insurance, got way worse and way more expensive. I remember when Obama passed that, and I looked at my next, it took a little bit, but the next time I enrolled for benefits, hundreds of dollars more I had to pay for the same benefits I had before. And there were some things that weren't even offered anymore because they couldn't afford to do it. I am loading right now 9 mil Luger, 115 grain hollow point. So these are my personal defense rounds. These are my concealed carry rounds. So they're 115 grain TAC XP. So these are 115 grain hollow point TAC XP. Just loaded in a standard 9mm Luger case. And then I'm going to be loading up my next 50 are going to load up with just Full Metal Jacket. These are definitely not on stands as sturdy as my other stuff. Stepdad has to drive 2.5 hours to a VA hospital for small things that could be done locally if they would help allow to use other hospitals. Yep, that's crazy. No, I actually do not own a shotgun. It's something that I looked into, but for home defense, I prefer the AR-15. Which, by the way, does not stand for assault rifle. And if Big Mama's here, it's called a mag. I don't know if Big Mama's still here. But it's called a mag. But I prefer AR-15 for self-defense because it doesn't recoil as much. The drawback is collateral damage, for sure. But I've also mapped out my entire home. The kiddos have them hair clips. I got one and bought salt loaded. clips are for civvies. These are magazines. I recognize that. Come on. Give me my 4.5. I need my 4.5 grains here. I'm pressing the trickle button, which gives me just a tad bit more grains of powder so I can get my full 4.5. But yeah, 2.5 hours to the VA, that's unacceptable. Like, that's not how we should treat our vets. Come on, man. Yes. So I've got my, so this camera is on the same track. It's the GH5, the Lumix GH5, and then I took the Lumix G7 and put it over here for the side view on that. Which I'm actually not sure. I may move it over here next time, because I could probably put it a little bit closer and position it a little bit closer. I'm not sure why I decided to put it over there. I think part of it is I'm gonna have to get an extended cable to run it down and over here. I had some extra cables and stuff that I have to unplug and plug in. So I have to hot swap some stuff to put it all back for tomorrow's stream. As far as cables go, I have two separate like cable setups, so I could keep the cables in place, but I am going to have to hot swap stuff on a regular basis to keep doing this. I am going to have to hot swap some of those cables. And I will have to move the cameras each time. So there's a little bit of manual labor involved for doing this. I also don't know like how often I'm going to do this yet. I don't have a schedule. I don't have a schedule for this yet. I wanted to get it going because I wanted to see how many people from the community were interested. I wanted to see, I wanted to get a beat on things, right? To see if there's at all an interest in this stuff. It seems like there is. We've been holding around 10 people here, so I don't know how many folks are actually interested in this content versus interested in just hanging out and talking about stuff we can't talk about on gaming nights, or that I feel like we can't talk about on gaming nights, because I don't necessarily think the Twitch community is interested in this kind of stuff, or it's a very few and far between maybe. Also, I think there's a stigma around it, frankly. I think there's a lot of folks who they go to Twitch to escape the day-to-day, not to talk about the day-to-day, or to talk about the hard stuff, right? Like, what would it look like if, you know, civilization collapsed as we know it? Would you make it? Some of us would, some of us wouldn't. I always find it interesting. It's funny because I've been like, and I don't go doomsday prepper, right? People are blind to reality. Oh, 100%. Well, and I think people want to be blind to reality. I think people want to live in their bubble and pretend like everything's going to be okay. Right? And they're not willing to say, what if everything wasn't okay? Right? What if you couldn't go to the store and buy food? I'll tell you right now, we'd be screwed. By the way, it would be a really hard winter. Going into winter, that's something that's on my mind, where I'm like, you know what? If the store shut down tomorrow and I couldn't buy food from the store, I have a plan that we've put in place years ago. And we've got some food storage, but I'm also not a doomsday. I don't have 6 months worth of food on hand. Where I'm going, where I would go if that were to happen, I don't have 6 months of food on hand. We would have to rely on hunting, the little bit of food that we have stored where we'd be going. And it would be a really hard winter. It would be a really hard winter until spring came and we could get the garden going, and we'd expand the garden, obviously. But I think there's an entire lack of self-sufficiency in this country, and a utter reliance on the supply chain that, frankly, I think we're finding out is really fragile. If 2020 has showed us anything, right? I mean, the shelves were empty from toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies for weeks, right? For weeks. Well, think about I Am Legend. I've hinted at this on the Twitch stream, but think about I Am Legend. You look at the book for I Am Legend and you see, holy crap, they put out an untested vaccine, or no, it was an untested cure for cancer that literally morphed everyone into freaking ravaging zombies. And how quickly the world was devastated. Would you be a zombie? Or would you be part of the small community that survived of humans? That's the question. And again, like, I don't ascribe to fear mongering. I'll leave that to the left. I don't ascribe to fear mongering, but I do ascribe to the idea of, I was a Boy Scout and I live by the motto, be prepared. Right? And again, I'm not a doomsday prepper. I don't have 6 months of food storage. I don't have all this stuff stored up. But I am constantly learning, right? Because I think that knowledge is power. I believe that. And I believe that the more you know, the better your chance of survival if anything were to happen, right? I always look at it like this. I live in a generally pretty tame area in terms of weather. We don't really get tornadoes where I live. I mean, tornadoes pass through, right? But we don't get hardcore tornadoes. We don't get we certainly don't get hurricanes, earthquakes, stuff like that. The worst we get is blizzards and maybe the occasional tornado, right? I'll tell you what would be the worst thing to lose: electricity, 100%. I 100% agree with that. And guess what? All of that food in your fridge and freezer, you don't have a backup plan for power. You can wave all that bye-bye. So what dry food do you have on hand now? Is it weird that I want the world to be in the situation like the I Am Legend? Yeah, I don't wish that. I don't wish for that at all. A lot of people were hoping for civil war, and I'm like, you guys don't understand what that would actually look like, right? I feel like there's a lot of people in the prepping community who like almost have a hunger to see the world burn, and I'm like, F that noise. I don't. I enjoy my electricity. I enjoy my warm showers. I enjoy my coffee in the morning. I don't want that to go away. Please don't take that away from me. We have it good right now. The pain, anguish, and hardship that would come from a collapse would be terrifying. And frankly, is something that I hope I don't have to ever experience, and I hope my kids don't have to ever experience. I don't have a hunger for it, but I feel that this world kind of deserves it. People have just been horrible to this planet. Oh, this gets into the faith side of the talk. Yes. Human beings are naturally, we're evil. We're sinful creatures. Self-interested, right? And this goes back to the whole government takeover thing, right? People live with it, they live in their self-interest. People live in their, like, they will put themselves first every time. And if you don't believe that, you don't understand human nature and psychology. And when people are given power, they'll seek more power. And if they're given that more power, they'll seek even more power. And eventually they will then take their will and impose it on other people. How do you think the Holocaust happened? Again, my faith tells me that people are sinful creatures. That at the end of the day, they will choose themselves over anyone else. And if it ever comes down to a desperate scenario, why do you think crime exists? Because when people are starving to death and their children are starving to death, there's nothing they won't do to put a meal in their kid's belly. We deserve it. Because we're self-interested human beings. Because we have our sins and our flaws. But I don't want to see it. I really don't. I'd really prefer not to. If we could avoid all that, I would be all for it. But I will not avoid conflict at the cost of everyone's freedom to be who they should be. This country was founded on the firm belief that we all are allowed to be free, equal men and women in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And if you're going to tell me that I can't worship my God because you don't believe in him, you can kiss my butt. If you're going to tell me I'm not allowed to defend my family without guaranteeing that there is no more crime in the streets, you can kiss my butt. I don't care. I will not be left defenseless and watch my family be murdered. And whether there's a percent, like, I don't care what the percent chance is. That's of no consequence here. If there is any chance at all that my family could be left helpless, then come take them. Ain't no one out there kissing my butt. Come on now. I'm out of bullets. Need more bullets. Be careful with knives, chillin'. They're not toys. I don't know if you can see this. Heck, my wife and I don't agree on everything, but we're happily married. But I wanted to tell you this is such a refreshing conversation. Why? Because it's not the popular viewpoints. This is why I wanted to do Homestead Heroic. Because there's no space for me in the gaming industry to talk about this stuff. There's not. And there are going to be people who are going to find this place. And they're going to be like, these are his viewpoints. And I'm going to be real with you guys. I could end up doing this and getting canceled on Twitch. Very easily. Frankly, if that's what God has in store for me, then so be it. But I'm done being quiet. You guys saw me break on Twitch. Yo, sounds good, Zane. Thank you so much for being my first patron, by the way. Zane was my first patron. And you will not believe how much that means to me. Truly. I wrote you a message. I don't know if you got it yet or not. But it means the world to me that you would believe in this venture just as much as you've believed in Dad Got Game and everything else. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you for that support. Honestly. I know. Well, canceled. Here we go, man. I hope not. I don't want to be canceled. But I know that there's a firm reality that is presented that I could be. Right? But if that's where God has me, that's where God has me. And I have no qualms with that. I have been on God's path the entirety of my streaming career. And I don't know if this ends up being where I was supposed to be in content creation in the first place. Right? Maybe this is where I was supposed to be. I don't know. Who knows? He's got a plan. He's got a plan. Yeah, I need to do, I don't have a bot running right now. I have no links or anything like that. But I do have a Patreon. I did put it in the Discord. And Zane found it and literally ascribed to the top tier right off the rip. Because he's a legend like that. So yeah, I don't know what this is. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if this is where God wants me or not. I don't know how short-lived this is going to be. I have some plans for the content that I want to bring you guys. I have plans for the conversations that I want to have with y'all. This is an opportunity for me to get some stuff out in the open that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, but never felt like the gaming space was the right space for it. Heck, I don't even know if YouTube's right for it, but I wanted to give YouTube a shot. Because YouTube, one, has more discoverability, so we could find more people who are like-minded, which is part of what prepping is all about, right? Part of, no one is ever truly, and I heard this in a podcast. I subscribe to the Homestead podcast. If you guys are not familiar with the Homestead podcast, it's all about homesteading and homesteading as a business and all sorts of stuff. They have really good content around homesteading, but DLive doesn't ban over ideology. Bro, I don't trust any tech to not ban over ideology. It's literally in Revelation that says we will be someday persecuted. I don't know if that's today. I don't know if that's upcoming. I don't know if this is big tech persecuting us now, because it certainly feels like it. By the way, I'm on Parler as Homestead Heroic. I know, it's parlay. It's French. But Christians will be persecuted someday. I don't know when that's going to be. I feel like it's already happening, sort of. But it's going to happen eventually. And if that means I don't get to create content on any of the big tech platforms, then so be it. I know that there are people being shadow banned on this platform right now. There are people who ascribe to the self-sufficiency ideology that are being shadow banned on this platform. Haven't yet, right? So I don't know how long this will last. I don't know that big tech will allow this to go on. I don't know a lot of things. All I know is what I know right now. And I know right now that this is what I'm being called to do. I'm being led to help educate others, to share my truth, and to learn from others, and to learn from their truths. And I think that's a big part of community. Self-sufficiency, by the way, 100% self-sufficiency. You hear this talked about all the time, right? What's up, Solito? How you doing, bud? You hear this talked about all the time, but self-sufficiency is a myth. 100% self-sufficiency is a myth, by the way. No one's 100% self-sufficient. Haven't been since the early days. It's always come down to community. It's always come down to taking care of one another, educating one another. We all have different strengths and weaknesses for a reason. And so part of this is learning what I don't know and trying to teach others what I do know. I'm very, very realistic about the fact that I don't know a lot about a lot. And I'm looking forward to learning that and seeing where that takes us. But I know that there's also a very strong reality that could bring us to a point where we can no longer use platforms like YouTube and Twitter and Instagram to share the things we care about, right? So there's always a part of me that's looking. Honestly, it's part of why I built dadgotgame.com, because I have no idea how long Twitch is going to be a thing, or how long Facebook gaming is going to be a thing, or how long YouTube's going to be a thing, right? If I learned one thing about Mixer collapsing, it was that crap don't last forever. And if you're not prepared to pivot when stuff disappears, you're ill prepared. Period. So make sure you're prepared. Because you never know. 4.5. Let's go. So y'all got any questions about the process that I'm doing right now? I've literally been just kind of like doing my thing, trying to pay attention, sort of. This is one of those things that if you're not paying attention, could potentially be dangerous. So I've been trying to kind of do both chatting and paying attention. Maybe reloading isn't what I should be doing while I'm doing this. I've got both. So I bought the bullets. And I also bought the powder, the primers, and I did buy brass. The empty brass. But I have bags of brass that I've picked up over the years that I also will be loading after I clean them. How do I set primers? There's a tool in this press. There's a little part right here that actually goes in the press, and this holds the primer, right? So you put the primer in here, and then you press it back down. So it actually slides in this slot right here. There's a little slot that you can't really see from that distance. But you put the primer in here, and then when you actually put this up, you set that primer. You put the empty shell in there, and you push that in, it'll set the primer up in there. So you have to deprime the brass, right? So for instance, right, this is just dirty brass that I picked up off the range. And so these have spent primers in them, right? So these are called dyes. You put a dye in here to deprime, right? So you'll push this all the way up, and it'll actually push this old primer out into this tube here. So then you'll have a full set of primers. So normally my process is I will deprime. I will take old spent brass. I will rip the primer out of it. I've got what's called a swag tool. This will actually, you put the case on there, and it'll take the primer pocket and it'll make it, it'll put it back to factory. So you deprime it, you swag it, and then I usually set it aside in this bin for clean. So I've got 1,000 rounds in this bin that have been cleaned, and are ready for trim and chamfer. So then I'll trim and chamfer them, trim them back down to overall length. 223 is what I normally go to for overall length. And then I'll chamfer them, which basically rounds the outside lip and the inside lip, so that this, you want the case neck, that's what that's called. You want the case neck to be smooth, so it accepts the bullet better, right? So deprime, swag, then clean. And I've got a tumbler with some walnut media that I'll throw 250 rounds in. It'll clean, it'll tumble it for about a half an hour, and it comes out looking like this, as opposed to the like dirty, just to compare. So you take a you can kind of see the difference between the two. This one is clean. It's a little shinier than this one, and it's obviously missing the primer. So the one's got the spent primer, the other one's got the non-spent primer. So I've taken that hole, I've taken that swag tool, made sure that this is uniform to accept the primer. And then I just have to chamfer, and I've actually got another tool here, that where you basically, you hold the case down on here, and it's going to chamfer the inside, and it's going to chamfer the outside. Then I put it on the brush, clean the primer pocket, and it's like a whole station where I can prep that case, and then it's ready for prime and load. Right? So it's a multi-step process to get your cases to a point where they're ready to actually be reloaded with fresh powder, primer, and bullet. It took me to do 1,000 rounds, maybe 4 hours. So I've got 1,000 rounds in this orange container that are cleaned and ready for trim and chamfer. And then once you're done there, then you're going to take something that looks like this. That's a 223 round. And you're going to seat that. You're going to put powder in the case like I'm doing here for the 9mm. How long have I been reloading? About 3 months. I've been reloading for about 3 months. I've done a lot of learning over the last 3 months. There's a lot to this process that I've learned over the course of time. There's also an investment to it. If you guys want to know how much I've spent on gear, there's a fair bit of investment into the gear to get to a point where I was comfortable being able to press enough rounds that made sense, right? Because you could get a lot of like manual stuff. You could get manual powder tricklers, and you could get manual case trimmers, and you could actually, I had a hand tool for a while where I was manually chamfering the inside and the outside of the cases. My hands ached. By the time I was done with it, my hands just ached from doing that manually. I'll tell you that $150 that I spent on that case prep center was probably the best money that I spent on everything besides for the loader itself. And there are some things that you absolutely will have to have, and there are other things that you absolutely won't have to have, but will make your life a whole heck of a lot easier. We're going to go ahead and take that primer out, because ain't nobody need that right now. So yeah, it's a process. It takes good to you would know, right? Um, you would know that good tools make the process that much better. And something that my dad always taught me, having grown up in construction, having run construction jobs for my dad, um, I learned very early on that you can either buy 3 of the cheap tool or you can buy 1 of the good tool, right? You're going to spend just as much money in the long run. You're going to spend just as much money. It's just whether or not you want to buy 1 or 3, right? What's a round number for the equipment you have simply to be ready to reload the first round? I would say probably around $1,000. I would say probably right around $1,000 to be ready to. You could, well, I shouldn't say that. It depends, because you could find a lot of this stuff used, right? And it's just as good used as it is new. I was able to get into some new gear for not much more than the used gear that I was finding around. And part of this was the timing, right? It's an election year. So this kind of stuff is harder to find, especially used. So, and I wanted to do, this is what's called a single stage press. You can get big old get-ups that are progressive presses where you can literally one stroke will do a whole bunch of stuff all at once, right? It'll press a primer in and it'll usually go in a circle, right? So you'll put a new case in and you do one stroke and there'll be 5 cases in there, right? And one will seat a bullet, one will put a primer in, one will bell the neck, and it'll do a bunch of stuff. I didn't want to go there. While that's going to be quicker in the long term, it'll allow you to make more ammo more quickly. I wanted to learn the process first before I decided to spend a bunch of money on something I didn't know about. One thing that I learned very early on in life is that you could have the best gear in the world. If you don't know how to use it, it doesn't matter, right? So there's a balance. Now I know that doesn't necessarily always apply for things like tools, right? A skill saw is a skill saw, right? But there's something to be said for if you're only going to do 1 or 2 projects a year, right? Buying a cheap skill saw might be a trade-off that's worth making, right? Yeah, keep it simple, stupid. I agree. So that's probably the hardest part especially about the globalization of everything. Speaking of China, it feels weird to say this stuff on camera. Globalization has made it a lot harder to figure out what's good and what's not, and where it's worth maybe spending something that's not as well made versus the economy of scale for just spending the money up front to buy the good stuff. Yeah, man, that's the good stuff. Bow, bow, bow. Come on, Trickler. I need 4.5, bud. There we go. Now we're talking. Now we're cooking with peanut oil. Speaking of cooking, our homemade applesauce is perfection. I was really happy with the way that it turned out. My father-in-law has apple trees that dropped a lot of apples. And we got a bag of apples. And I'm super happy with the way the applesauce turned out. Okay, that's going back in. It was only 4.3 on that scale. This is why I'm using 2 scales, by the way. It's taking me a lot longer, but I'm making sure that my loads are actually appropriate, or are scaled right. Because sometimes these scales can be finicky. and you want it to be close, or you want it to be. Oh, we had a ton of I think we did maybe 8 pounds of apples. It was a lot of apples that were peeled. So mom, oh man, it's not mom got game. Mom got game for right now. So my wife did all the peeling and I was cutting. I was coring, cutting, slicing, and then putting in the crock pot for cook. Because we did the 3-hour cook off. It actually ended up being more like 6 hours to get them soft because we had so many. So the recipe called for 3 pounds of apples, a third of a teaspoon of cinnamon, a tablespoon of sugar, and a cup of water. A third of a cup of water. You put it all in a crock pot, spread it out all over the place, and then you cook it for 3 hours. You're supposed to cook it for 3 hours. And it softens up to the point where you can mash it with a potato masher, and then it's ready for store. Problem is, we didn't have a potato masher, and we did like 8 pounds of apples instead of 3. Pat, have a great night. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it, fam. I hope you have a good rest, and we'll see you tomorrow. So we ended up doing about 8 pounds of apples, and had to basically we basically tripled the recipe. And because we didn't have a potato masher, there were still definitely like chunks of apple. It didn't turn out exactly like the applesauce you buy from the store. But I'll tell you right now, it was almost like apple crisp without the crisp. The kids love it. I love it. And I think that's all that matters, honestly. The kids love it and I love it. So it was like, yeah, it was like chunky applesauce, which, by the way, when it first came out, I was like, I'm not eating that. Because I don't like chunky peanut butter. I don't like chunky consistency. That's not my gig. Not my thing. Nope, not a thing. But I was surprisingly fine with it because it was basically like apple crisp. It was basically like apple crisp. So it was fine. Fudge my nuggets. I just dumped a bunch of powder. That sucks. That's because I wasn't paying attention. And that's how quick it happens, folks. I don't like feeling chunky, which means I have to get another part of preparedness that I'm completely unprepared for is I need to get back in shape. How to pickle things? We actually did our own canned pickles. We did our own canned. We didn't do pressure canning. We did just like refrigerator pickles. But we're actually, the funny thing is that my sister-in-law is an expert canner. She cans everything. And they have a huge, ooh, the smell of gunpowder, baby. They have a huge garden. And so they can a lot of things. Tomatoes, potatoes. They do their own pickles, which for those of you who don't know are just cucumbers. And then they're pickled and pressure canned. And that gives you pickles. But yeah, they do all sorts of that stuff. I'm missing yeah, I know, right? Hey man, I'm not going to be opposed if you want to buy some Streamloots cards and make me do push-ups and sit-ups and all that jazz, man. Tell you that right now. All right. There's our full 50. So, and this is why I keep the old, this is why I keep some of the factory ammo containers that I've got. Because now I could just take the 50, put it in there, throw it in a box, and we're good to go. So it took me like an hour and a half to do 50. But part of that was because I was talking. If I was not like trying to pay attention to chat and be super hyper engaged with you guys and making like, you know, uber amounts of points about things that I don't get to talk about with you when I talk about gaming stuff, I would have moved a little faster potentially. But now I've got 50 self-defense rounds that are ready to go. However, I need to get another 150 to 200. My normal training session is about usually 150 to 250 rounds. Usually if I'm going to go to the range or I'm going to go out in the woods, if I'm up north, I will bring with me 150 to 250 rounds, depending on if I'm shooting AR or if I'm shooting pistol. Most of the time, if I'm up north, I'm usually shooting both. I will train multi-discipline, multi-weapon discipline if I'm up north, because you can get away with a little bit more when you're out in the woods than you can at a range in the city. All right, there's our 50. So now I got to go through and prime everything. Of wanting to be self-sustaining with ammo, if your setup is bought and paid for, where's the break-even point of ammo off the shelf versus supplies per round? Right now, my break-even is like 50 rounds. Right now, factory ammo is about double or triple the price, depending on what caliber you're talking about. About double or triple the price it would normally be. They're charging $1 a round for 9mm. This is costing me, so I can buy a quantity of. Well, let's look it up here real quick. I don't even wanna go there with guesses here. But if I go to Everglades Ammo, which again is where I normally buy the bullets that I get. You go to Everglades Ammo. So for 9mm right now, if I buy 9mm bullets at 115 grains and I get a pack of 500, it's $25 for a pack of 500, I think. Is that 25 for? No, that's for 100. It's $68 for a pack of 500. So let's take 68. Now, if you buy everything new, that's going to reduce your price per round, your price per round save, right? So if you buy brass, primers, bullets, and powder, right, it's going to cost you more. It's not going to, you'll still save money by doing it yourself. 68 plus, let's get 500 brass. Handgun brass, 9mm, just new brass. So that's going to be plus 100 for the new brass. A thing of powder is normally, depending on what kind of powder you get. If I'm looking at, so 1 pound will easily get you 500 rounds. You'll easily get you'll get probably more out of it. And that's the hard part about estimating, is if you're buying like anywhere average from, can I look for pistol specifically? Let's look up the Ogden. Where's the power pistol? HP 38 is $27. So add another $27 for a pound of Ogden HP 38, which is what I'm using. So you're up to 195. And then primers are usually about $25 a case of a. Oh wow, they went up a little bit. So that's the other part of this, is things are, so you normally can't get a smaller pack. So 1,000 small pistol primers are $40, right? So the numbers are off. Let's say it's $20 for the 500, right? So you're loading 500 rounds for 215 bucks. So you're looking at 50 cents a round if you're buying everything brand new, right? 50 cents a round if you're buying everything brand new. Where'd my chat go? 217 messages and under the bridge? You guys are dumb. Where did my chat go? Oh, you know what? I think I was looking at the channel dashboard. 38 bucks for 50 rounds, right? Who's charging $1 round of 9mm? Look online. Go to Cheaper Than Dirt. Go to Ammo Man. Go to, if you look on like Midway or Optic Planet, oh my gosh. So 215 bucks, and this is buying all brand new stuff, right? This isn't picking up range brass. This isn't finding a deal on any of this stuff, right? If you pick up range brass, you're already saving yourself $100 bucks, right? You're already saving yourself. If you pick up range brass and you're literally not using brand new brass, you're saving yourself $100 bucks right off the rip. So you're talking about 115 divided by 500, right? So if it's 115 divided by 500, you're looking at 23 cents a round, right? If you're looking at 215 divided by 500, you're looking at closer to 50 cents a round, 43 cents a round. So if it's a buck around, now average 9mm, right? Average 9mm, if it's not $1 a round, right, is going to be right around probably 35 to 40 cents a round. So you're not necessarily saving yourself a ton if you're buying all the components and putting it all together. Now, prices are higher right now because they're scarce, supply and demand, right? Tough to, well, and that's the point, right? 63 or 68 for 50 for 9mm. Well, that's right now. Normally the cost is not as high as it is right now, right? Taking everything out of context, the normal, so like 223, if you can find 30 cents a round factory ammo, you could find 30 cents a round or less. That's a good deal on 223 ammo. Buy it, right? 9mm is normally a little bit more expensive, if I recall correctly. It's been a while since I bought factory 9mm, which is why I'm loading my own 9mm right now, is because the last factory stuff I bought was a little bit more expensive because we were just starting to get to a point where I was like, I should probably stock up on some ammo because it's an election year and we know that things get bad. But which reminds me, I'm going to get started on priming some of this other brass. And this, I like to have a jar down here for primers because primers are tiny, by the way. NYC is more than that. I'm not surprised. NYC is more with everything. So I've got 10, I've got 35 primers in there. I need another 15. New York's expensive for everything, man. And New York City's even worse. It's a miracle you even are able to have a gun in New York City, to be honest. Unless you're a criminal. Which they're moving to, by the way. They're trying to make us all criminals. Every gun owner, they want to make every gun owner a criminal. That's going to be an interesting day. So because this is new brass, I don't have to do anything with it to prep it, which is honestly a godsend. That's one of the benefits of using new brass, is that you don't have to do anything to prep it. Now, depending on the caliber, like my brother is loading 45. I'm loading 9mm. This 9mm brass, generally speaking, is, I don't have to bell it. It's pre-belled, which means that the neck is pre-expanded so that it'll accept the bullet better. And I don't have to crimp it. Or I don't have to expand the neck. Which reminds me, actually, I need to go back and I need to crimp all of those rounds that I put away already. But I want to get my plinking round started because I'm going up north for Thanksgiving, and we're probably going to do some shooting. So I want to be prepped and ready to rock for that. So I put my rounds in upside down when I'm priming, and then I flip them right side up so I know that they're ready for powder. It's kind of the process that I do. It makes it easier to know where I'm at in the process. And especially if I have to like go to bed in the middle of it or something like that, if I haven't moved as fast as I'd like. So I have these trays where I put the cases in, and I'll put them in, you know, primer side up while I prime them, and then I'll flip them over so that I know where I'm at in the process. Took me 2 years to get a license in NYC. So many interviews with cops. Took me less than a month in North Carolina. See, that's what I'm talking about, man. It's prohibitively expensive, and the process keeps you from being a law-abiding citizen. There's literally, it's in the Constitution. And I know a lot of people want to get rid of it out of the Constitution. By the way, this is something I don't know. Something I've not really looked into. How many amendments have been removed from the Constitution over the course of history? I don't actually know the answer to that. Does anyone know? How many amendments have been removed over the course of history? I know some have been modified. Or there's been like amendments to amendments, right? They were expanded. Now, are some of those expansions to the benefit of the government or the benefit of the people? Google says only one. Which one was removed? I'm curious. Because that's what they're going after. The funny thing is they will not. I don't think they'll ever remove the Second Amendment, but they're going to try and neuter it as much as they can. If you looked at Biden's website, only one constitutional amendment ever been enacted to repeal another. The 21st, ratified in 1933, repealed the 18th Amendment, ratified in 1919, which had instituted so they used the Constitution to institute prohibition. That's interesting because prohibition is... Well, so was there anything in the Constitution to protect drinking or alcohol consumption? Probably not. All right. So we're going to go ahead and prime these cases. Like I said, you take this, you put it in, you take the primer, make sure the primer's in the right way. As in cap, like where the firing pin would actually hit the primer, make sure that's down so that the primer's going in the right way. And then you just take this down, shove it in, make sure it's flat. Sometimes if you don't push it hard enough, the primer won't be flat or slightly recessed in the shell. You want to make sure, I check every one just to make sure. If it's slightly recessed, that's okay. But if it's sticking out at all, it could cause feed issues, and you don't want that, obviously. And then it's ready to go. So that's how you set the primers. I suppose there's probably nothing in the Constitution that ever protected the creation and consumption of alcohol. Albeit, I would say that the pursuit of happiness might have been impacted, but that was Bill of Rights, right? It would help if I put a case in there. It turned out really good. I'm happy with it. The one thing that I was unhappy with, I didn't necessarily want to use 2x4s for the legs. I used 2x4s for the legs, and that wasn't something that I wanted to do, but for the sake of efficiency and cost, I didn't want to spend an arm and a leg on the lumber, and I didn't want to go through the process of really finishing all of it. So I just kind of rough finished the bottom. The biggest help Safeguard 2A supporters have is in the fact that we have 2 new justices. Yes, agreed. However, if they pack the courts, it doesn't matter, right? They'll railroad those 2 conservative justices in a heartbeat. So if they pack the court, it's not going to matter. However, I have hope that those who have armed themselves will stand up for what's right. And all it's going to take is 1 or 2 guys with guns if they were to try and take them, which, by the way, logistically is darn near impossible. If they took every active service military man, woman, every law enforcement officer in the country, and every National Guard person in the country, they still wouldn't have enough people to cover every door for every gun owner in the country. In fact, I think the number breakdown was something like 1 to 10. Right? And that would require that they pull everyone back from all their overseas engagements, deployments, etc., to deploy them in the States to remove all of the guns. Right? What they're counting on with this is law-abiding citizens just going, here you go, here's my guns. That's what they're counting on. They're counting on people being complacent about how illegal it is for them to require us to turn in our weapons or to buy back something they never owned in the first place. A weapons buyback, by the way, is one of the biggest sleight of hands to ever face humans who care about their well-being. To pretend like it's okay for you to tax me and then use that money to buy weapons you never owned in the first place is a load of hogwash. You're basically charging me to buy property you never owned. You're full of crap. They didn't remove the prohibition. They just modified it by enacting laws on distribution of alcohol. Fair. Good thing that Republicans control the Senate. For now, we have to win Georgia. We may not, Yakuza. Still don't understand how they could pack the court, because that means going from 7 to 15 or some mess. How could increasing the number even be legal? It is. They could technically do it. The midterms in 22 is going to be interesting because Democrats possibly lose control of the House. We'll see. Depends on how many people we can wake up to all this crap. And by the way, for anyone who thinks that I only watch Fox News, that would be an incorrect assumption about me. I see a lot of Democrats go online and they're like, get your nose out of Fox News. It's the only thing you watch. No, actually, I watch CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC. I watch Fox News. I also watch the Epoch Times. I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. I watch a lot of things from a lot of different places. It's not a... if you get your information only from the mainstream media, I think you're doing yourself a disservice and you're putting way too much trust in that system. But the Senate is close enough that it could swing too. Yes. There is this come and take it thing down here. Definition of buyback means you had ownership of something first. Right. Well, I'll tell you right now that I know several people who are come and take it people, including myself. And like I said, it'll only take one or two incidences of someone serving a no-knock warrant on a registered gun owner and getting shot for them to be like, okay, all right, maybe we should reconsider or refigure this out logistically. And I would never wish that upon law enforcement officers, by the way, because they're just doing their job and they want to go home at the end of their shift just like anyone else. Imagine having a mind of my own. I know, right? Well, and that's the thing that I didn't get, and here's what I hate about the gaming space. It is so left leaning, and people were like, if you voted for Trump, I'm done with you. And I'm like, you're not interested in even understanding why. You're not even interested in understanding what I care about. You're so insistent that what you care about is more important that you didn't even want to have a discussion with me about why. If that's the type of person you are, I guess I don't want to be associated with you then. Because I would never excise someone from my life simply because of who they voted for. Because the voting in this country is unfortunately right now black and white. We're stuck voting for a Republican or a Democrat. And a lot of people will say, yeah, but there's Green Party candidates. They don't have a chance to win an election. Everyone's like, it's not a wasted vote. Well, I think it's a wasted vote. That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. You're entitled to yours too. And that's fine. But I think it's a wasted vote right now because no Green Party candidate or Libertarian candidate or birthday party candidate or whatever you want, they don't have a shot. They don't have a shot, period, in winning. And until there's a Green Party candidate that polls, and I know polls are full of crap too, by the way, but until there's a Green Party candidate that polls even close to pulling enough votes to win, it's a wasted vote, in my opinion. So you're either stuck voting Democrat or you're stuck voting Republican. And unfortunately, those two parties are so polarizing on all of the topics, right? Because, let me spit some more truth here. Having a discussion requires a solid argument. I don't even agree with that, Lady PK. I don't think having a discussion requires a solid argument. I think having a discussion involves you actually wanting to come to the table and talk. And if you don't have a solid argument to back up your points, then that's fine, right? I'll call you out on it then. But we aren't even getting to the table to have the talk. And that's what I have a problem with. They don't even want to talk. They're like, oh, you voted for that guy? Heck no. Nope, you're done. And I'm like, okay, I guess. I mean, that's fine. I'm not going to excise you from my life because you're so shallow that you think my vote was predicated upon the assumption that I don't care about you as a person. I'm going to be a Christian conservative Republican to say, I don't think gay marriage should be banned. If you're gay and you want to get married, the government should recognize it. The church shouldn't, but it doesn't matter. The government should. So, why is this still a problem? And why do you think that me voting Republican has anything to do with thinking that you shouldn't get married if you're gay or have access to equal health care? Now, if you think that I'm going to be okay with my tax dollars going for you to change your sex, change your physical appearance, you got another thing coming. I'm not okay with that. But you should have access to the same basic medical care that everyone does. I don't think that like, why is that even legislated? Shouldn't even be a question. I think it's going to come down to who the sheriff or local law enforcement decision makers are on how the buyback or take it from you thing will be implemented. Oh, 100%. Ask Hillary about them polls, right? But again, like, even if the polls are wrong, I want to see a Green Party candidate have 30% of the vote before I'd even consider voting for a Green Party candidate. Because right now, they're lucky if they get single digits, or they're lucky if they get double digits. I'd be shocked if they got double digits. And that's the challenge, right? I think the two-party system's broken and it screws everyone. How can't it? For every major issue we have in this country, it's you're either for it or against it on one side or the other. And there's no room to be a pro-gay Republican. There's no room to be a pro-gun Democrat. I don't want my taxes to pay for anything that doesn't help the infrastructure. I mean, I'm fine with people, low-income people who need access to health care. I'm fine with paying for Medicare. I'm fine with paying for Medicare for those who need it. I believe that everyone should fundamentally have access to health care, right? That's important. But it's the way that you go about it that matters. And I don't think that the way that the ACA was implemented was the right way to go about it. Fining people because they're not going to sign up for health care? You're a commie. Basic health care. If you're below the poverty line, right? And you don't have access to basic things like annual checkups. If you're a woman, you should be able to have your regular gynecological appointment or whatever it's called, right? You should be able to be checked down there and have your boobs checked out, right? To make sure that you're healthy. That should be, every American should have access to that. Every American should have access to that. But the minute you take out privatized medicine is the minute where the whole system just goes downhill. Because the government has proven time and time again they don't know how to manage services appropriately. Time and time again. The government has proven that they don't know how to manage services the right way. Look at how the VAs run. Social Security isn't going to last very much longer. Right? Medicare and Medicaid could be better. If you can't do the basics right now, how in the world are you going to manage a complex system later? Prove to me you can make the basics awesome. Then I'll trust you to make better decisions. Until then, you could take your socialized medicine and you could shove it. Because it's not going to help anyone. And the difference is we actually improved our lives, got jobs, and bettered ourselves to the point of not needing Medicaid. Now, here's the interesting thing, Jim Bro. Not everyone has access necessarily to opportunity. I think there are systems in place to keep people down. I've seen it. Doesn't matter. Like, no mother should have to work 3 jobs just to put a roof over her kid's head and put food in their stomach. There are people who do it. Those are the type of people who we should be incentivizing or giving opportunity to go back to school, reskill, skill up, and go to one job where they could actually be present in their home. Because there's a major issue with the degradation of the family unit in America that leads to the poverty and the lack of equal opportunity that exists today. Yes, agreed, Jim Bro. And right now, with the way that things are going, people have too much incentive to go back to work. If you make it more beneficial for you to stay on government welfare than you do to incentivize people to go back to work, what are they going to choose? This is fundamentally why big government fails. This is fundamentally where big government fails. And why those who are calling for big government really have no idea what they're talking about. The bigger the government gets and the smaller the person that gets, the worse it gets for everyone. Until it gets to a point where it's no longer manageable, and then you end up in a civil war or with a breakdown of your economy or any other number of things that go wrong when you mismanage people to the point where they're just done. What about criminals? And I'm not talking about light crimes. So you asked, what about banking and what about criminals and light and not talking about light crimes? What do you mean, what about? Are you talking about prison reform? Or the fact that black men are incarcerated at what, 1 in 10 times the rate that white men are incarcerated at? There are people who will not work to live themselves, and Babylon succeeds at taking care of that class of people. Scripture talks about this. Yeah, that's true. Prison reform, job opportunities. Well, here's the interesting thing. The administration that is in office at the moment actually addressed some of that stuff. Right? Working on legislation to get people out of prison who are in prison for crimes that they shouldn't be in prison for. They should be on parole for. Things that should be misdemeanors. By the way, the war on drugs failed. We should probably look at people who were literally put in prison for possession of marijuana. We should probably commute their sentences because it was a non-violent felony that shouldn't have been a felony in the first place. The problem is that they're too valuable to the prison system because they get free labor for it, or highly reduced labor for it. I probably hold a lot of unpopular opinions. Worth noting. Talking about heavy crimes and opportunity after they serve time. So, I guess what are you asking, or what are you specifically trying to address? So, opportunity zones, by the way, if you're not paying attention to what they were passing and what was legislated, is incentive and an influx of cash into low income neighborhoods for job opportunities, for companies to come in and make jobs, or for startups in low income communities to get additional funding to get off the ground. That's what opportunity zones addressed, and is something that was trying to be infused into low income black neighborhoods, right? To try and stimulate growth and equity there. No, I don't think that they should be. Those people should stay in prison. I don't think that's a question. Even though a bunch of them were let out because of COVID. I don't think they should be out. If you did a crime like that, sexual assault, murder, rape, kidnapping, human trafficking, should all be life in prison. Or send them to the moon. I don't know, something. That being said, as a Christian, that goes directly in the face of forgiveness and opportunity to change and repent. Right? That's a tough one because a civilized society would say, yeet them. Death penalty, get rid of them, send them off to who knows where, put them in the Bermuda Triangle or on the moon. Right? But as a Christian, I'm supposed to believe in second chances. I got a second chance. If I don't believe in second chances, I don't believe in my redemption. I don't believe that Christ came and died for my sins and that I have an opportunity to go to heaven because of what he did. Right? That's a fundamental ideological difference between what the answer would be for someone who's not of the Christian faith versus someone who is ideologically aligned to political and social construct versus faith-based constructs. I don't know how often it happens, but what about those people who go to prison? They've been in prison for 20 years and they find Jesus in there. Right? Do you fundamentally as a human being believe that someone who has done something as horrific as murder someone can change? Do you believe that God can enter their life and they can fundamentally change the person they are and become a good person? Become a contributing member of society and not someone who takes away. And this is the hard part about legislating versus like legislating without your faith being involved versus legislating with your faith being involved. right? Because my conscience would say that if someone were to murder my family, I need to forgive them and let God do the judging. That's what my faith says. My sinful nature as a human being would be to get revenge. I'd want that person to die. But that's not what Jesus would want. And if I'm striving to be like Jesus, that's not okay. Right? We have to figure out where the line is drawn. For me, as a person of faith, I have to find out where the line is drawn when it comes to forgiveness, acceptance that people can change, etc. Well, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, Yakuza, for people who say served 20 years, had a perfect record in prison, right? Reformed, and then got out and repeated the crime they did before. The horrific act that they might have done. I don't know what the stats are on that, right? I can't speak to that. The real question is, how big of a gamble are you willing to take for a murderer to have the temptation of another murder? Yeah. Those are the types of things that I think this is, for me personally, right? This is a Bob personal statement here. It's a matter of, I just realized this stool is incredibly uncomfortable to sit on for hours on end. For me as a person, it's coming down to, I don't know if I could ever be a legislator. I don't know that I could ever be in Congress and vote on these types of things, because I don't know that I can separate my faith enough to do what's right constitutionally versus what I believe is right as a person and a person of faith. Yo, sounds good, Yakuza. Thank you for hanging, man. I appreciate you stopping by and giving perspective, dude. Honestly, like, this is, I think this is really good. I think this was the inaugural stream, and we had a lot of people stop by, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm getting ready to wrap anyway. I'm kind of at a point where I've reprimed. I'm ready to start loading. My Full Metal Jackets, but I've really enjoyed hanging out with you guys and having some real talks. Someone can be changed and saved, but we're all subject to temptations. 100%. Absolutely. And again, to Jim Bro's point, I mean, how much of a chance are you willing to take? I feel like this is a bit of a safe outlet, and it's a place where it's not 100% safe. There are going to be people who might stop by who are probably never going to stop by my channel again, right? Because I've been very open and transparent with what the things I believe in, and they might not align with them, and I honestly, I'm okay with that. I need to be able to share these things with y'all, and this is the kind of relationship and community I have, and if that means it's a smaller community, so be it. Never again. You've been awfully quiet, dude. I should probably figure out if there's a way for me to integrate Discord so we can actually have like conversations with people, but right now with the way that this is set up, I don't know that I can. But I enjoyed it. I think it was I don't know. I think it was good. It's not going to take up stream time at the moment. But if enough people are interested in the content and having these discussions, we'll cross that bridge when it happens. It's definitely very different. Now, I haven't actually loaded these I am going to have to change the overall length, I think. Oh. I may have to bell these cases for the Everglades ammo. So the X-Tax that I was loading, the X-Tax that I was loading slid right into the case by default. So the X-Tax, you could see I could slide it in to the case without bellying the case at all. The Everglades ammo, which is also significantly shorter than the hollow point. Significantly shorter than the hollow point. It's not that it's not a good sign. It's just that there's no, like, it still goes in a little bit, but not as much as the other ammo. Not as much as the other bullet. So there's actually a die for this. What I'm going to have to do, this is what my brother was running into. He was loading 45 from, I'm in the minority of thoughts and ideas. So just being able to have oh, absolutely. That's been the challenge being on Twitch, honestly. What my brother was doing was when he was loading the Everglades ammo for his 45s, he actually crushed some of the brass because it wasn't belled. So what I'm going to have to do, there's actually an expander die that I'm going to have to swap out. I'm going to have to swap this out for my expander die and expand the shell. I'm going to have to expand the shell a little bit to accept the to accept the 9mm or the to accept the plinking rounds, the Everglades ammo. So always keep your instructions, by the way. Like I said, I've only been doing this for 3 months. So the expander die, screw it in until it touches the shell holder, then back out 1 full turn. So basically, in order to make sure that this is appropriate, this is set the right way, you have to put this up to full stroke. So you put the handle all the way down, and then you have to loosen the lock ring, set it down so that it touches. This is called the ram. Set it down so it touches the ram, and then you have to back it out 1 full turn. So you see where this sits? So it touches. See where that sits? And turn it a full turn out. Then hold it down and lock the ring in place. And now that's set to the right depth. So now that's set. Now I'm going to have to go through all these cases again. Now I would have, had I known this, I would have done this prior to priming. But now we bell that a little bit. And you could actually see that the bullet slides in just a tad further. You know, the other thing I realized, so my brother, so the one thing you have to check with when you're making your own loads, you have to be careful because depending on how deep the bullet goes in is going to depend on how high the case pressure is. My brother developed a load, a 4.5 grain load for these bullets, these Everglades rounds. He did not develop a round for these 115 grain hollow points. I just loaded all those hollow points at 4.5 grains. Now the max on this powder is 5.1 grains. I loaded them at 4.5, so I'm well below what the highest pressure is, or the highest grain load is in a 115 case. But I did not test. The case pressure will change depending on where the bullet's seated. So depending on how deep the bullet's seated is going to change the case pressure. And the higher the case pressure, the more bang bang you get, and the more potential ramifications there are to the weapon itself. So I'm going to have to actually test a few of these hollow point rounds to make sure the case pressure is not too high in the hollow points, because the case pressure is going to be significantly different than the developed round for the Everglades ammo. So I'm going to have to test that. I'm going to have to test that when I'm up north. You know what I might do? I'm going to load a few of these with like 4.2 grains instead of 4.5 to make sure that it accepts that. And if everything's good there, then I can shoot the 4.5 and test that to make sure that there's no case pressure issues coming out of my Glock. So, welcome to the world of reloading, ladies and gentlemen. Where developing your own rounds is a progression. You always do what's called a ladder. So when you develop rounds to see what works best for your weapon, you usually do it in a ladder. So there's always reloading data on the canister. In this case, the 5.1 grains is the highest that you can go for this powder specifically. And so because this is 4.5 grains in what I just loaded, I should be fine because it's significantly lower than what the max 5.1 grains is. And I know it doesn't sound that different, but it is. So I should be okay. But what I'm going to do is I'll probably do some 4.2 just to be safe. If 4.2 passes the test and there aren't any case issues, I'll check the 4.5, make sure that's okay. And then I can load the rest at 4.5 ongoing to make sure that we're good there. So I've got some more work to do as part of this development. But guys and gals, thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for spending time here at the Homestead. It's weird because I wanted to say Dad Cave, but it's not the Dad Cave. It's the Homestead, I suppose. We'll call it the Homestead for now until we come up with something better. But I'm looking forward to doing more of this, guys. I'm looking forward to doing more of this. If you guys stuck it out for as long as you did, I appreciate you. It was nice. It was nice. I don't know. This might be a once a week thing for now. Right now, I'm not planning on replacing any of my actual streams with this, but it is something that I'm passionate about and something I want to make more content for, and I'm looking forward to making more content for. So we'll see where it goes. If y'all like the content, make sure you sub if you haven't subbed already. I know a lot of you probably have. Been quiet because I'm playing LOL. How's the new season? Or how's the new changes? They made a lot of changes to the game, right? This is therapy. It is. It's very therapeutic. I think. I'm finding it very therapeutic anyway. Not to mention, I'm like, I don't sit still well. I never have. Obviously, you guys know this about me. I don't sit still well. So having something to do with my hands while I'm talking is a good thing, which is why I've always naturally, I think, kind of done well at streaming too, is just because I don't, if my hands aren't doing something, I get bored, which my wife likes to, she calls me out for being on my phone all the time, but I'm like, I can't just sit and not do anything. I need to be doing something. So give me something to do or something, but don't expect that I'm just going to sit here and not do anything because it doesn't work. So, but we're going to wrap there. Yeah. I'll let you guys know when the next one is. Maybe maybe we'll make Tuesdays a thing. I don't know. Maybe it'll be Thursdays. Maybe it'll be nights that I don't stream. But yeah, we're going to keep doing this. So I appreciate y'all and, have a good night, and we'll see you guys back over on Twitch. Back over on Twitch on, tomorrow at 4. And then I will also, I'm going to be updating and making commands and stuff. I'm going to have to find a bot that I can use. And I'm going to have to make some commands for things like Instagram. Homestead Heroic, you can find on everything. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Parlay. Is it Parler or is it Parlay? Parler? I don't know. Parler. And then I'll probably make a channel as well in the Discord for it, as well as linking the Patreon role to the Discord as well. So we'll probably make that Homestead Heroic channel maybe, I don't know if we'll make that Patreon only or not. But as I do videos as well, as I do like curated content, that is going to release on Patreon before it's going to release on YouTube. And that's going to be one of the benefits to being a Patreon supporter, is that you're going to get my content. Any content around this is going to end up out on Patreon before it ends up public. So there's going to be early access stuff. Obviously everything's going to be ad free if I can add it to Patreon. I'm still figuring out how that's all going to work. But yeah, we're going to go down that route for now, and we'll see where we go. So have a good night, y'all. Be safe. And we'll see you guys next time here on Homestead Heroic. God bless y'all.